So Austin, you're clearly recognized as one of the foremost principal cellists, or especially of our generation today. And so we'll definitely get to that part of your life, but I want to actually talk about your life before your work with the ISO, where you were still obviously a student. And it's interesting because you actually had a lot of success, I would say, with competitions early on in your life, having won prizes at the Stolberg, Klein, and Schatt competitions.
Mhm.
At what point did you decide to pivot away from competitions and focus on taking orchestral auditions? And was the goal always to aim for principal jobs?
Sure. So I guess the last competition I did was that chat competition in Pennsylvania, and I did that my freshman year of college, I think, either freshman or sophomore. And I remember pretty soon after that one, it came the time because even before this, it was a little bit of a question of, do you go the solo route or do you go the orchestra route? Or, I mean, and in there's chamber music, but I kind of knew rather early on, fortunately for myself, that I wanted to go into orchestra music, um, primarily actually because of, we were talking before the recording of Mr. Leonard, but primarily because of Mr. Leonard.
Mhm.
Ron Leonard was principal cellist of the LA for 24 years. And so I was incredibly fortunate to actually study with him from when I was 14 until 18 at the Perlman Music Program in Shelter Island, New York.
Mhm.
And so I remember actually speaking of competitions, the very first summer that I went to PMP, I was preparing for what I think was actually the last Rostropovich competition in
Mhm.
2009.
Mhm.
And so I was this 14-year-old kid who didn't know anything but thought he knew everything, which is a very dangerous combination for a 14-year-old cellist.
Mhm.
And so basically, I walked into it and I was just trying to play as loud and as fast as possible. And his whole thing was just like, hey, let's take a step back. We don't have to play, for example, Elfantance. Like, we don't have to play that, 180. We can just do 160 and we can really wow them with phrasing. We can really wow them
Mhm.
with the articulation and everything.
Mhm.
Um, and so I remember coming out the first couple lessons just like, who is this guy? Like, who is he to tell me how to play this piece? And then fast forward a year, and I had matured significantly, thank God. And I was just like, oh, this is like one of the most inspiring experiences ever. I'm so disappointed that I wasted a year by like because I was fighting him every single opportunity I could get.
Mhm.
I mean, he admitted that he actually rather enjoyed that because it was always constantly making sure, like little things like he would be like, "Oh, we need to do this bowing." I was just like, "Oh, but I prefer this bowing, and this
Mhm.
is why I prefer it." And so we'd have this
Mhm.
kind of open dialogue. So actually, he mentioned after I got into Colburn that
Mhm.
that was a interesting facet of teaching me. But it was one of those where after studying with him a few summers and knowing that I wanted to go to Colburn,
Mhm.
part of that was also I wanted to essentially I looked at him and wanted my life to be like that when he actually just turned 90
Wow.
this past month. And so I looked at his life, his career, and I was just like, this is exactly what I want. I want to essentially, then that's kind of the perfect role model is like,
Mhm.
is somebody who you look at everything they're doing and you can't imagine anything better than that. So, and
Mhm.
one of the things that he mentioned when I first started taking auditions was, in a lot of ways, the principal cello role is ideal if you don't know exactly what you want to do. You don't want to get kind of um, pigeonholed into one specific category
Mhm.
because, for example, let's take this season right now. I
Mhm.
obviously every week we have an orchestral perform or almost every week. We're a 46-week orchestra, so we have 6 weeks of built-in vacation.
Mhm.
And so we have that. So orchestra playing, which is really fun. We just did like Brahms one, Tchaik six, a lot of
Mhm.
also new music, some Nadia Boulanger.
Mhm.
Um, and so this past week we did. And so we have that. We just did. I did chamber music. Trying to think, the schedule's so hectic. I can't actually remember the last chambers I did, but I
Mhm.
know, for example, I'm doing Quartet for the End of Time
Mhm.
in a couple months, and then in March I'm doing Shostakovich Concerto with a small orchestra in Minnesota.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, like every couple months, you have something different, and so it's kind of the best combination. You get to play orchestra every week,
Mhm.
but have enough projects on the side where you really have to stay in shape.
Mhm.
But you also are allowed to explore different opportunities and really enjoy that instead of one of the big things I did the Kronberg master classes in
Mhm.
2010.
Mhm.
I was talking with Gary Hoffman and Franz Hummerson then, And they were essentially saying, if you want to go into soloing, you have to get really good at staying patient.
Mm,
Because A, solo careers don't happen overnight, but B, a lot of it is just like your manager will be like, okay, what two or three concertos can we program? And that's
mm.
the only thing that you will play with
Yeah.
orchestra. So those two or three concertos.
Right.
And in order to be a successful soloist, you need to sell it to the crowd every single night.
Right.
For example, we played Shostakovich with Johannes Moser this past summer at the Colorado Music Festival.
Mm,
Absolutely fantastic. I love his playing to death.
mm,
But he sold it so well. And I know that's a piece that, because we had actually played it with him previously, and I
mhm.
know that he had a recording of it. For example, the reference recording that I used when I was kind of going through that part before the rehearsal was actually him with the was it the NH Symphony Orchestra in Germany. So
Oh.
he plays it a bunch, and he
Mhm.
still sells it like it's like he's excited about it. I don't know if he's actually excited about it, but so little things like that where it's just like it keeps you interested, um, and keeps you engaged. I guess to get back to the original question with this really long answer is essentially, I didn't always just take principal auditions though.
Mhm.
The ISO was my fourth audition.
Mhm.
I did in this order: Principal of Detroit, section of Cleveland, section of Houston. Those two might have been, those were within like a week and a half of each other, which was an absolutely horrible idea.
Oh wow.
Also because they were very different lists. And if
Mhm.
anybody's taken the Cleveland Orchestra auditions, they ask for really random stuff.
Right.
I mean, some of the things now don't seem that random. So like, that was the first time I learned also Sprach. The first time I
Mm,
learned, it's the Mav Last, the Smetana, but it's like
right.
not the Moldau. And
Oh,
so
right.
stuff like
Mm,
that.
mhm.
So stuff like that was just like that mixed with like Houston, which is very standardless, but also had their own things like Schubert 9 and
Mm,
Beethoven 8. So there wasn't a lot of overlap. So that's the whole thing. And then,
mm,
so I took some time off after that,
mm,
because I think I was a little bit burnt out on
mm,
auditions,
mhm,
and then applied to ISO.
mhm,
Luckily, I am also from Indianapolis, or sorry,
mm,
not Indianapolis. I'm from Indiana,
mm, mm.
and so I was able to feel like there was a little bit of a hometown advantage because I had heard the ISO play before.
Right.
Um, I had played in the hall before. I had actually at that point I had also played with the ISO before in a high
Mhm,
school competition.
mhm.
Excuse me one sec, I have to cough. Cool. I know. Sorry, I'm just
No, you're
getting
good.
over being sick right now.
Oh no.
I'm not sick right now, but
Mm,
last week I was sick, but there's
mhm.
some residual bad coughing.
Sure, sure.
Um, but anyway, so I felt actually this was the first audition because also Mr. Leonard and I had kind of sat down and reworked how we prepared for auditions. It
Mm,
was the first audition that I felt prepared for, honestly.
mhm,
Felt like I knew what I had to do. And luckily played the first round, and I hadn't advanced in any auditions until that point. Played the first round, and the personnel manager pulled me aside. I was just like, hey, I'm going to deliver the news in a sec.
mm.
But the committee's actually voted to move you straight to the finals. I was
Oh
like,
wow.
am I gonna wait? Where's the cameras? Like, is this a joke? So I did that, and then it was funny because obviously I living in Indiana, I did the ISO high school concerto competition, which is when I was able to play with the ISO for
Mm,
the first time when I was like 15 or so.
mhm,
Actually,
mm.
ironically, with the conductor who ended up hiring me,
Oh,
Christoph.
oh yeah.
Um, and so basically, the screen comes down after they announce that I was awarded the trial week.
Mhm,
And the former concertmaster, Zach Depew,
mhm,
who was on
mhm.
my committee as a high schooler when I was doing the high school competition, he just,
Oh wow.
throws his arms and was like, no shit. It's one of those where it's just like,
That's
it,
so
it's,
funny.
it also made me feel better because I was just like, uh, almost, there's a bit of imposter syndrome also because like if you had an advance and you finally won an audition, won a trial, you weren't sure if you deserved it or not.
Mm,
And then the fact that they had no idea who was behind the screen made me a
mm.
lot happier because it was a truly blind audition. But
Right.
there's a long answer for your short question.
No, that's so. And honestly, like I wish I mean, no, this would be horrifying, but they could make like a reality TV show with like the blinds coming down and like, oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, so during a particularly difficult audition one time,
Mhm,
we were joking because what I found, I mean, I've probably sat on, I want to say without exaggerating, more than 20 audition committees now, as
mhm,
well as
mhm,
still auditioning as well.
mhm,
And so there's one, it kind of goes in waves. There are some really, really fantastic rounds where if we have 8 people in a round, we might have
mhm,
6 people advance.
mhm,
Um, but a lot. more often than not, you have rounds where it's just 0-8 vote after 0-8 vote. And so
Mm.
we were coming up with creative ways. And so we were just like, oh, what if we just like, it could be blind until we have like the voice style chairs where like you press a button and it turns around. And if everybody presses the button within a certain time, that person goes straight to the
Oh,
finals, like the golden
oh,
buzzer kind of
oh
thing.
my God.
Something tells me that wouldn't fly with the union. That sounds a little bit sketchy. But
Right.
that's what happens when you're like 45 people in and you're just like,
Yeah.
when is this ever going to end?
Right.
And then you have the one savior of an audition who comes down and plays Don Juan just beautifully, and you're
Hmm.
like, we have our finalist.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
yeah.
then you guys are for the first time in a while like a full
Mhm.
section now, right? Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, and I think a lot of orchestras have kind of been going through this and navigating these, let's just call them interesting post-COVID times.
Hmm.
So especially with the ISO, and a lot of orchestras have done this as well, but especially with the ISO, a lot of the people were hired at the same time back
Hmm.
in the 70s and 80s. So
Hmm.
everybody was approaching that 65-year-old mark.
Hmm.
And a lot of them, because of the substantial pay cut that we took coming back in 2021
Hmm.
with the regressive contract, a
Hmm.
lot of them actually found it more beneficial to actually retire, collect pension
Ah.
and Social Security
Hmm.
than to basically lose money playing in the ISO and
Ah.
actually having to work. So
Yeah.
we had, I think, over the course of the pandemic, we had 3 or 4 people retire,
Mm.
and then there was one who was not at the retirement age, but once we signed that regressive contract, he just walked in and said
Mm.
that he was done.
Mm.
So basically, I'm the longest serving cellist now, which sounds weird to say. The second longest serving cellist is an absolutely fantastic cellist
Mhm.
who also is taking a year leave of absence because she's playing the San Francisco Opera. She won a job there,
Okay.
so she's on a leave of absence right now. But everybody
Mm.
else is really new. We hired basically 3 rounds of people,
Oh,
and
wow.
we I was really happy we ended up doing this because also you never want to go through a no hire audition.
Right.
Luckily, I've never been on a committee that has no hired, so
Mm.
I'm I don't know, knocking on wood wherever it is.
Right.
But also, we have always hired for the number of spots available too, because we've always felt that for example, if we have this last audition, we had 3 positions,
Mhm.
and well, two, and then one came up later,
Mhm.
and so we were able to hire for 3 positions.
Mhm.
Because I know some places do, they might have 3 positions, but they only feel like one person's qualified for the tenure track. Whatever,
Mm.
for whatever reason, our auditionees, now our section members, like they were such at a high level that we felt, incredibly comfortable offering them the full-time tenure track job. So
Oh,
we've
wow.
been a combination of incredibly lucky that
Mhm.
everybody has kind of converged on our audition and they've all sounded really fantastic.
Right.
Um, but also it's been a little bit of an uphill battle at times as well, because now you have an entire section of people who haven't always played in an orchestra before.
Right.
And so, because
Mm.
also as somebody who's done this many years now and also played in school orchestras absolutely do not translate to professional orchestras.
Right.
In
Right.
terms of like how to prepare, yes, you know how to prepare for an orchestral rehearsal. But in terms of, for example, preparing your body to be under the stress of playing a different concert every single week,
Mm.
um, I think our general average service is about 7 to 8 services per week.
Mhm.
And so going through that, I remember my first couple of years, I had really horrible tendonitis
Oh,
because I
wow.
tried to play every concert, 110%.
Right.
I also had a lot of leftover tension issues from college as well.
Mhm.
And so those have since been fixed because I learned how to play in an orchestra and how
Mhm.
to pick your battles a little bit wiser when
Right.
you actually play.